Right, so in this video I wanted to explore with you, if you're interested in watching this sort of thing, how I'm trying to kind of make sense of EQ and that sort of thing. So to me, if you say to me 500 hertz or 80 hertz or 6,600 kilohertz, those don't necessarily mean a whole lot to me. I know to some people, that might actually mean something. Like you might start to get like a sensory feel for what those numbers actually mean. Similarly, like if you said a G major chord to me, I can kind of hear in my head what that sounds like. For me, the EQ stuff, I'm not there with it yet, so I wanted to try and educate myself on that and understand how EQ works, or sort of what those numbers are. So the lens that I'm trying to view this through is that of a Mesa Boogie EQ, because that's kind of 5 points, and what I want to do is just show you what that is and then make some kind of more chat about whatever. So we'll kind of figure this out together. Now, if you're already an expert on EQ and that sort of stuff, this is probably not going to be a particularly helpful video for you. So yeah, this is what I wanted to do. So this audio track is going through this plugin. And so you see there's sort of audio across the full range. And this is how I wanted to understand this. So this will obviously have an application for guitar tone, but it's easier for me to show you how these bands, or show myself as well, understand what's going on here. So the first band on a Mesa Boogie EQ is 80 hertz, and in your helix you've got the Cali EQ5. So this roughly is this area. Here that's sort of a bass note essentially that's getting pronounced there, the kick and the bass guitar there. So roughly this is a E flat, I think. Around about an E flat, that's the indication that Reaper gives me here. And so, that is very much a real kind of, that fundamental is a bass note that would exist in real music. So a bass guitar and a kick will definitely be hitting around that number. That's 80 hertz. So 240 hertz is the next slider along, and that to me is hitting kind of where that snare fundamental is, kind of around that area. This is like an octave and a bit higher than the previous band. So 240 hertz. Is that right? Or maybe I need 220. So yeah, 240 hertz. I've got these actually mapped out on a real kind of thing as well. So on a real kind of bass thing, here you see where that fundamental for 80 is. So that's that D flat, and then we jump way up for the next note, which is the B in the third octave, and that's way over here. So quite a big leap there in those first two sliders. And like that note for me seems to be roughly where the snare is. Part of the snare anyway, so that's starting to be where you hear some of the kind of key instruments competing for sound, or in guitar, that's definitely going to be the sort of notes that you're hitting at the lower end of the fretboard. Band 3 is here. And that note is an F sharp. So here, 750 hertz. And if you try and sing that note, for instance, that's kind of right in the middle of where the music is happening, if you like. So 750 hertz, between 240 and 750, I'd say, is where you got quite a lot of the real music happening. And then fourth band is this C sharp 7, and again, so this might be like some of the higher notes that you're hearing in a piece of music might get up to this kind of level. of exaggerating the shimmer of the track, as well as like the snap of the snare. So you're getting kind of that shimmery stuff up there and the snap of the snare. So again, I think the bands 2, 3 and 4 from 240 up to 2200 is where you've got the majority of that kind of musical content happening. And so I guess we could even try that in a second. If I cut out kind of below 240 and I cut out above 2000, you'll see what happens there. So then the last band that I wanted to show you, which is on the Mesa Boogie, is this. So this 6600 to me is like the resonant part of like a cymbal. And if you listen to, sorry, that's annoying. If you listen to this, is a G sharp in the 8th octave. Sounds like this. So way up here. And you know, it's kind of a very high note to hear. Certainly not the sort of note that anyone could sing particularly. So it's like, to me, like that sizzle, not quite sizzle, but like the if you were to have someone driving a bell on a cymbal, on a ride cymbal, it's the sort of frequency that kind of is piercing. And you know, maybe if you got hit in the head and you got a ringing sound in your ears, or you know, like the sound after a drummer has been really smacking a snare drum on a Friday night at a wedding with his stick round the wrong way. Thanks, Tony. That kind of thing. It's like a very high, sizzly, ringing sound. And so those are the 5 bands that you've got on your Mesa Boogie amp, or in the Cali 5 EQ. So I think that's quite a helpful way to understand this stuff. So if you listen again, I'll just flash through them. Just, I think, quite a helpful lens for me has been to understand what those actual bands are doing. So here again, we just play through them. So this is the 80 Hertz, and then as we move on, we get to the 240 Hertz. So we jump up quite substantially there to like the lower end of the guitar. Then the 3, we get to sort of really that fundamental, is like a right in the middle of a singer's range. Then the D sharp. So this 3rd kind of slider, 750 Hertz, kind of right in the heart of where that music is happening. Then the 4th slider, we get to a C sharp 7. So this is kind of that higher end kind of little synthy plink stuff that you might get. And then at the very top end, this 6600 Hertz thing, which is absolutely where you've got some of that kind of high-end sizzle stuff happening. So in terms of guitar, the way that I kind of understand this now is that, you know, this 80 Hertz is kind of below where our notes are hitting, but when we accentuate things around here, we're going to be accentuating the low end response and the feel. Or if we reduce that, we're going to kind of be cutting into that low end response a little bit. Then as we get to this 240 Hertz, this is kind of where the fundamentals of our kind of lower notes on the guitar will start to be, but absolutely kind of a note which we could hear played on the guitar. And you know, that's kind of a crucial kind of area. Then 750 is going to be kind of higher up the neck, definitely again a key area. So between 240 and 750, that's to me where a lot of the music's happening, as I've said before. Then this 2200 is like the higher end of stuff, and then 5 is kind of that cymbal territory, where you might expect to find things like fizz and stuff like that on the electric guitar. So also, let's just try and understand with another EQ, set up the high pass and the low pass, we can start to hear the impact that this would have. As we reduce things up to like this 240 Hertz point, we start to get rid of the thump and the feel kind of factor. And then in the top end, lose many of the actual notes if we reduce this in this way, but we do lose like the sparkle in the top end. And we lose kind of that thump and low bass, but a lot of the music and the music kind of stuff is retained just within this kind of 240 to 2200 kind of range. Do bring back in is sparkle and thump at the same time. So I like to think of like that first slider on the Mezzo Boogie as being that kind of thump stuff, and then the last slider, the 6600 thing, as being like the sizzly stuff, the brightness, stuff like above a presence control or around that kind of area. So hopefully that's vaguely kind of helpful. Now again, obviously important to note that you can make changes with the EQ, and by reducing kind of high end, what you're effectively doing is also essentially boosting the bass in a way and the mids, because you're just effectively changing the balance of the overall tone. So this is now a darker tone in a similar way to an also darker tone. Think about not just boosting signals you want, but you could also attenuate signals that you don't want in a way to change the balance of a sound. So for guitar tone, obviously that's something you want to be aware of. You know, if you want to make something darker, you could not necessarily always consider boosting the bass. You could consider shelving highs, or if you want something to be more kind of mid-scooped, you don't just have to boost the bass and boost the trebles, you could just bring the mids down. That sort of stuff, which probably when I say it now it seems very, very obvious. And also to say, when you make EQ adjustments, you are effectively changing the level. So I'm going to have a little think and have a little play with some tones as well, and try and come back with some idea of how we can apply this knowledge to a real guitar tone. The other thing I just wanted to show you is, what about if we just kind of high pass and show you kind of what's happening beyond kind of 6600 Hertz. Get an idea for what that actually is, so you can kind of hear there it's just a lot of that air stuff. Starting to get a few notes now. Similarly, if we do the same sort of thing with the low pass, you can hear kind of there, we're just getting really bass. So like the stuff that's happening below kind of 240 hertz is that stuff that to me is really heavily connected with like feel, and you know, this is what's cool about live music and what ends up being cool in like clubs and things that people dig there. It's kind of that low hitting stuff which you feel in your chest.